Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the mid-year book freakout tag. I think I did this last year. I don't quite remember. I would have to go back and look. But hope you guys stay to watch, and if you do, hope you enjoy. Bye. So, the first question for this is, what has been the best book so far that you have read this year? And there's so many choices, but I would have to say, for me, the best book I read this year would probably be one of the first I read this year, called Saint Nachos. It's the first book in a 4-book series. Why it became one of my favorites that I read this year was because it is a male romance, and I love those. But the main reason is because one of the main characters is mute. He cannot speak. He may be deaf too. That I don't quite remember. But anyway, he uses sign language. And I love that in the book, our other main character actually learns how to use sign language. Instead of the book just glossing over the fact that he had a disability and strictly just using stuff like text messages and computers to have him communicate, they actually showed the love interest learning sign language so he can talk to the other young man. I remember after I first read this book, I literally was like jumping up and down and gushing, and just like OMGs were popping like all over my head, all over the top, like OMG, 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 OMG. So, yep, that was my favorite book I read this year. Let's go on to the next question. So, question number 2 was the best sequel you have read so far this year. I actually haven't read a lot of sequels this year, but out of the 2-3 that I have, I would have to say Betrayed, part of the Cursed series. It is a modern day retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I definitely recommend it if you love retellings and if you love male romances. Love it. So the next question is a new release that you want to read but you haven't quite gotten to it yet. And for me, that will be Roman and Jewel, which came out January 5th, and I still haven't gotten to it yet. But it was one of my most anticipated books for 2021, so I'm really surprised that I haven't gotten to it yet. Again, it's kind of another retelling. It's kind of a modern day Romeo and Juliet retelling. I don't really know much about it, but what I do know is that they are in high school, so it's modern day. They're in high school, and they're actually putting on a play about Romeo and Juliet. And what makes it different is the play is supposed to be like a hip hop twist on it, I will let you know more once I actually read it. So the next question is, what is your most anticipated upcoming release for the second half of the year? And for me, without a doubt, is Oath Bonds, I think. Here are the pictures here. It's book 2 in the Bloodline trilogy. When I read the first book, Bonds of Brotherhood, I think it's called. Or no, Bonds of Lead. I'm drawing a blank. I could not put it down. I could not stop listening to it. And I'm not big on sci-fi. So that was the first like sci-fi book that I had read and absolutely loved. So as soon as I heard that this book was being released, when it was being released, I pre-ordered it months in advance. So you know I'm going to be reading that the moment it is released. So the next question was, what are some of your biggest disappointments? Disappointing reads of the year. And I really only have this one. The Havoc at Prescott High. I bought this and bought the second book in the series because it really sounded good and I thought I was going to love it. I couldn't even finish the first book, which really sucked because it sounded awesome. So I ended up returning it to Audible and getting my money back for it. But that shows you, which is why I don't buy books unless I do research. Plenty and plenty of research, which I did not do on that. So, but that really has been my only upset this year. Like, I haven't DNF'd a lot of books, but that one. So, I guess I'm doing good for this being halfway through the year. Time to go to the next question. So, the next question is the books or book that most surprised you so far in 2021. And for me, that would be this one, The Names of the Dead. I'm not that into like army themed books or military themed books, but this one, yes, it had those elements to it, but was not. This story is about a man who was like in secret ops or something like that, and he ends up going to jail for something. And when he is released several years later, he finds out that his ex-wife is dead and his son that he didn't know about is missing. So it's his journey. He goes on a journey to find out what happened to his son and to find out why his ex-wife died. I really liked all of the adventure and all of the twists and turns that he goes through in this story. So, time for the next question. So next question is newest fictional, because I cannot say certain words, newest fictional crush you have. And I haven't actually read a lot this year, sadly. I've only read like 26 books. But for me, I would have to say that would be Nick Fairfax from the Cursed series. I absolutely love him. He was the cutest, sweetest young man that in all of these books that I've read as of this year, that I'm just like, aww, like I literally just want to wrap him up in a blanket and cuddle him. So, yep, that is my top fictional fantasy crush so far for 2021. Next question. So, next question is books that made you cry. As my mom likes to say, I'm a hard ass, and I hardly cry at anything. So when I do, she's like, oh, you're crying? But for me, the one book that has made me cry this year, it isn't a fantasy book, it isn't a fiction book, it was actually a memoir. My Life Amongst the Underdogs by Tina Rores? I'm not sure. If you've ever seen the show Pitbulls and Parolees on Food Network, on Animal Planet, she's the lady who runs Leah Bolos Rescue Center. And there was just a couple stories in this book about these animals that I'm literally at work crying tears. And that says something for me if a book makes me cry. But that one this year definitely has made me cry. So please check that one out, especially if you love animals. So the next question in our mid-year freakout was books that made you happy. And for me, there's two. The first one I read in April. Bridesmen? I think it is. Bridesmen? It's not groomsmen. It's like an hour and like 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. I couldn't sleep one night. I needed something to listen to. So I found it. It was a free listen on Audible. Very short. I listened to it. I cracked up so much in it. It just made me laugh. I actually would have wanted to read a longer book about the two main characters in this book. The next one is one that I actually just read recently. What's it called? Spring Spikes? Spring Sugar? Spring... It's something that's SS here. It is... And it's only the second book I've read about a trans main character. So that, I was yay. It's about a young man named Charlie, who has to move from his home in New York back to the small town where he's from. And he helps out in his mother's bookshop. One of his biggest fears about going back home is that he's completely changed. the big thing, he's no longer a she. And he's worried about how people in his small town will treat him because of that. But I loved all of the characters in this story. I loved Charlie. I loved Charlie's mother. I loved the potential love interest. And I loved the potential love interest ex-girlfriend. Oh, the last scene of her in the book, I literally was at work and I like fist pumped the air and was like, hell yeah. So those are the two books that have made me laugh and made me smile. Time for the next question. And the next question is an author, a new to you author, or a debut author that you loved. And for me, I've only read one of her books, but I'd say for me, that is Elizabeth Hunter. She has written, I don't know the name of the series, but the book I read of hers is called Ink. And I really loved it. I could relate to the characters. This book made me happy, made me sad, made me mad, all at once. I definitely want to pick up some of her new work, or some of her other works. Next question. So this next question, I really don't have an answer for. The question is, what is one of the most, in your opinion, beautiful book covers that you have bought or received as a gift this year? And I really don't have any that I've bought or gotten this year. I have one from last year, but not one from this year. So, yeah, there's that. One more question to go. So the last question for this is, what is a book, or what are some books that you have to get to by the end of the year? And for me, there's 3. One I've already told you about earlier in my most anticipated releases of the second half of the year. Oaths of Brotherhood or Oaths of Bonds. Unless I'm looking at it, I cannot remember it. Here's the book again. The first sci-fi fantasy book I've ever read. I am definitely, hiccups. I am definitely looking forward to it. The next book is the second book in the Ranger's Apprentice, the early years. The battle at Hackham Heath. I think that's how you say it. It's technically already a reread for me, but I am doing a challenge for myself this year to read every single book in the Ranger's Apprentice series. So that's the second one. And then the last one that I have to read before the end of the year is a book that my dad actually chose and bought for me. I recommend him books all the time, but he I'm watching for my aunt. I recommend him books all the time, but he hardly recommends me books because he knows how picky I can be. But he recommended me this book and bought it for me. And I told him I would read it and tell him what I thought. Can't think of the name of it. I'm drawing a blank, but this is the book. From what I know of it, it's about like a contest of some kind. And I think there's like a group of kids. I don't quite remember. But those are the 3 books that I want to read by the end of the year. So what'd you guys think of my list for my mid-year freakout? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of my list, or have you read any of these books? Have a good day. Bye.